Hi, I'm Danny,
I'm Sam.
and this is Business in a Brew.
We'll be poring over business stories,
And talking about things that interest us in the world of business.
so we'd like you to just take a few minutes out, listen.
Yeah, we'd love it if you join our conversation with us. Good afternoon.
I was going to say that.
No, I tell you what, I've said it. You're never going to beat me. I'm going to say it first every
Right,
time.
Fair enough. Okay, right.
Yes.
How are your hips, Danny?
If I'm honest, they're not that great.
Oh, God.
I know, well,
Are
I
you
am getting
struggling
old.
to walk?
No, I'm not struggling to walk. No, I just
You
couldn't.
know, you've
I
passed
couldn't sit in
40.
teddy bear for a long period of time.
Sitting teddy bear?
Sit in teddy bear.
In teddy bear.
You know, when your legs are out to the side and you have to stretch down the middle.
Oh, right, okay.
It's called teddy bear.
I don't do that. Okay.
Well, if you did, your hips would probably hurt like mine do.
Okay. Well, maybe, is it because you've been sitting
No,
in
that's a
teddy bear
stretch.
in teddy bear? It just sounds a bit wrong.
Okay, well,
Okay.
yeah, all right. But yeah, no, my hips aren't great. But thank you for
Yeah, but
asking.
you're getting pain, yeah?
And yeah, I do get a bit of pain,
Okay.
yeah.
Well, you need to watch out for that.
I probably should,
all I'm
yeah,
saying.
because I'm getting
Yeah.
old, yeah.
Yeah. Well, yeah. My mum's in her she's 85 this year. She's got really bad hips. Oh no, one really bad hip. She's on the waiting list for replacement, but she's in absolute agony. Refuses to take a painkiller.
Is that a price thing?
Painkillers because they kind of hide the truth, you know, and
Yeah,
she
but-
feels a bit groggy after them and all sorts of things. But she's in
She's
such a lot of
retired. She
pain.
could take a nap.
Yeah, but she doesn't like to make a fuss, you know.
Oh, that's a generational
I
thing.
know it is. Bless her. They take a lot of strain, these hips.
They do, yeah.
Oh my goodness. I mean, it might, you know, my knees.
Don't. Yeah.
Anyway, so
My knees hurt too, if you're curious.
see, there are increasingly cases for people having their hips replaced.
Yeah, my mum had a hip replacement
Right.
before they wanted to do it because they said they'd have to do it again
She had it
before.
before they wanted to do it.
Yeah, so she had hers. Oh, golly.
Who was they?
Hang on, I'm getting there.
Hmm.
She's now 70, so she would have had it in her 50s. And
Wow.
the doctor said it was really too early to have it done because she'll have to have it replaced.
Yeah. 'cause
She'll
they
have
only
to have the
a certain
replacement.
life.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But she has degenerative arthritis,
Right. Yeah.
which is super fun
Yeah.
because it's not catching. What's that thing?
What?
You pass it down. Not
Oh,
catching.
hereditary.
It's hereditary, that's it, yeah.
Yeah,
So
got
that'll be
it.
nice.
Yeah, and that's exactly it. The reasons for hip replacements.
Mhm.
So when you've got pain and stiffness and they're affecting your life, a hip injury like a fracture
Mm.
or a disease, yeah, like you've just mentioned, osteoporosis, arthritis, bone dysplasia is another one, which is basically where there's a growth that can impede your movement. Physiotherapy isn't really effective. Drugs aren't really effective. Yeah, so joint replacement becomes necessary.
There's not enough cod liver oil in the world.
There are lots of different types of joints out there on the market. Metal, plastic, and ceramic are the three main component types.
Okay.
How they're made. The first ever hip replacement.
Mhm.
Have a wild stab in the dark as to when you think that might have taken place.
The 50s?
Way earlier.
Really?
Yeah.
They didn't have. When did
They
they
let
have?
someone with their grubby little mitts inside someone's hip to replace their femoral head with ivory.
That's the femoral head's the round bit at the top. Yeah.
That's right, top of the femur.
Yeah.
That was 1891 by a person called, I'm not going to pronounce this correctly, Themistocles Gluck.
But they didn't have. What's that stuff that knocks you
supposed
out?
to say, wow, that name.
Oh, I'm sorry. Wow, that name. But they didn't have anaesthesia then, did they?
Oh, I think they had a wooden spoon. Yeah.
I'm not sure.
I
someone
think they did.
cutting
No,
off the top of my bone. Oh,
Yeah. So
ivory.
developments were made during the 40s, a bit of a gap there, but I think all sorts
Into
of
non-organic
stuff
materials?
was done. Yes, all sorts of stuff was done, obviously, for the wars.
Yeah.
They learned all sorts of things there, but during the 40s, 50s, 60s, they became fairly commonplace after that, right up to date. Now, I'm going to talk today about the DePuy orthopedics hip replacements.
DePuy
did-
orthopedics.
Yeah, so they had the pinnacle and they had the ASR.
Okay.
And the ASR XL and the ASR resurfacing. And the difference between XL was a total hip. So basically it was femoral head and ball and the cup, the socket completely replaced.
Right.
And
rather than just part of it.
Yeah, so it's in like the total head and the neck and the ball replaced, and then this hip resurfacing, which is just the coating on the ball and then the cup in the pelvis. So in 2003, there was approval given for the Pinnacle hip replacement system, and in 2005, the approval given for the ASR.
Mm-hmm.
And DePuy was a subsidiary of Johnson & Johnson.
They do everything.
Yeah, everything. And I'm just going to pick out the ASR as more of a story. It was developed as a direct competitor to the BHR, which is the Birmingham hip resurfacing joint, which is already popular in the UK particularly. It appears that DePuy didn't want to lose market share.
Fair
so
enough.
they developed this thing, and they developed it quite quickly.
Always worry when stuff's developed at speed.
Right. There were requirements to meet European standards. And the BSI approved it for the UK.
Mm-hmm.
The FDA had already approved it as well. And they approved it in 2005. But I say approved and approved in the UK, but it was under what's called a 510K similar equivalence device.
Oh, what, like, it's kind of like that one. Can you just sign it off?
So you don't have to put it through stringent in-person tests. You would get, basically fit it into a human being, pretty much like what happened with the previous one I just mentioned. It would have to go into humans, and then they would be monitored over a series of years.
Oh.
It didn't go through that process because it was similar or equivalent to. It was also made up, one part of it was made up of an older device with a newer device, and it was basically all metal. So it was an all-metal head or ball and an all-metal cup. And it was made from a very hard-wearing...
Just sounds squeaky.
...alloy of cobalt chromium. Really, really...
Okay, yeah, really
strong
tough
stuff, yeah. And that allowed the joint to move by metal rubbing against metal. Okay. There would be some liquid in that joint, from the body that would lubricate that joint, yeah.
Sounds so awful.
I know. But you think of metal and metal.
I'm thinking.
Yeah?
Yep.
Why would I be talking about this?
It sounds like it would...
Does it sound like something might go wrong?
Yeah, because if you grind metal on metal, you either get sparks or shavings.
Yeah, well, the thing is, it might be, if there was a standard patient, let's say a standard patient of, let's say 9 stone, and it was a standard
I would honestly say 9 stone is probably very underweight.
Yeah, all right. But you've got more predictability maybe.
Mm-hmm.
But if the person was significantly heavier, then that would put more
pressure on it.
I don't know if this is actually what happened, but
the vagaries of the human body you can understand.
Yeah, exactly. So what happened was that the idea of this one was it would allow for it gave more flexibility and more movement for younger people. So it was a hip replacement for younger people.
Right.
And so it was made to be a lighter weight, more perhaps more durable, but also just more movement, more movement available. But what happened was that over time, and it was as short as a couple of years, and these things should last for 15 years or so, the replacements started to break down. And what was happening was the friction between the metal components was releasing microscopic metal particles. Yeah.
It's grinding away as itself.
Literally shavings into the surrounding tissues. But so small were some of these pieces, these became ions, if you like, and they were released into the bloodstream, causing adverse reactions like I've got here local damage and inflammation, adverse local tissue reaction, as one was called.
You're essentially poisoning your body with metal poisoning.
Yeah, so locally, and also it led to a bodily adverse reaction to metal debris as well. Yeah. The body tries to heal itself, growing around it. But there was metallosis going on, which was basically inflammation and of fluids and filled with metal particles. Reactions to that, pseudo tumours, osteolysis, osteonecrosis.
Maybe your mum's right and shouldn't have a hip replacement.
I know. But so the reactions would lead to nausea, vomiting, malaise, cognitive impairment, hematological abnormalities. Basically your blood has metal ions in it, particularly cobalt, chrome, and neuromuscular changes.
Yeah, if it was a naturally occurring metal in your body, it might be different, like iron.
Yeah.
But obviously, it's not.
Well, forcing iron into your body.
Well, no.
But I've read accounts of surgeons going into joints, and I've seen some of the video going into some of these joints.
Oh, I'm so glad you're not sharing those.
And it's black on the inside.
Oh.
And pockets of fluids with specks in and whatnot.
I don't think we'll refer to pockets of fluid again.
Yeah. I'll try not to ever come up with that again.
Thank you.
But it was called by the media one of the biggest disasters in orthopedic history. There were years of the D word.
The D word.
Denial.
Oh, denials. That's not what I thought the D word was.
Not today, it's not. By DePuy that found they gave denial that the ASR implants had caused pain and disability in patients. And a statement was given to the British Medical Journal that, given the available information, we believe we made the appropriate decision later to recall at the appropriate time.
It's a bit late when it's in my body. Filling me with cobalt.
So there was this almost there was nothing wrong, and then there was something wrong, and the denial, and then the seeming acceptance.
Yeah.
But so I'm just going to go through a bit of a timeline, really. So in 2008, tens of thousands have been fitted. Yeah. Around the world. Yeah. By 2008, over $1 billion in sales of these. So it's very, very lucrative.
Yeah.
But recipients globally reported excruciating pain, bracing to walk, can't work, inflammation, and then the things I've mentioned. Critical design flaw was actually found in a UK lab. So they basically put it through stress testing and found this.
Which they should have done before it went into human beings.
But previously it'd been blamed on doctors' surgical techniques.
Of course it was,
Blame it on the people at the sharp end.
Yeah.
They had to remove it for what they cited declining sales, but in 2010. But in reality, orthopaedic surgeons had stopped fitting it.
Yeah, it was declining sales, but because it was unsafe.
Because it was being widely spread throughout the medical profession that these were actually seriously wrong.
Yeah.
There was a problem. Particularly, one of the videos is a particular doctor performing the surgery, and actually he's saying this is what we're having to deal with. So the patients were having to go in for further surgery, having to have them replaced.
Yeah, the pressure that puts on the medical system.
Absolutely. There was a certain amount of this. Actually, the NHS was having to deal with this. Not the private sector. Of course, we have free healthcare at the point of demand. The company had to pay for that corrective surgery.
Yeah.
And this went into the millions, absolute millions. And some people took Johnson & Johnson and DePuy to court. The first case was lost against Johnson & Johnson, I believe. So I've got all sorts of sources, but the company pretty much systematically failed to prove the hip joint, that it didn't meet the level of safety that the public generally were entitled to expect at the time when it entered the market. And it carried an abnormal risk of damage, as alleged. But DePuy had said that they were pleased the implant had met the standard of safety under the Consumer Protection Act and performed well or better than other prostheses that were on the market at the time.
Maybe they were comparing it to the ivory one.
And had been backed by a strong record of clinical data showing reduced pain and restored mobility for patients suffering from chronic hip pain. Yeah, but that's over a short period.
Yeah, in the first week.
Yeah, and one particular quote, this beggars belief. at DePuy, we have no greater responsibility than to the patients who use our products, it says. So that they were pretty disappointed by the judgment, where they'd ended up being forced to make a large settlement of $2.5 billion to compensate patients who required revision surgery, due to complications. So the whole issue was pretty much sealed. Its fate was sealed from the moment that it acquired basically what's called the grandfather rights, the 501k, which was the without direct approval from the FDA or the BSI, British Standard Institute. They were able to push the product through.
Yeah, I'd almost say it wasn't DePuy's fault. I'd almost say it was the fault of the standards people for going, be fine, similar to that.
Yeah, well, they had, of course, they would have had a legal team that would have declared that it was.
All right, it's their fault as well.
What was the word I used? It was
like demonstrably similar or something, wasn't it?
Yeah, exactly, and that is where the problem was. The allowance for that particular area.
I think anything where it's medical, anything where it's invasive in someone's body, you need to be a little bit stricter with.
Well, I think so. My understanding is that this has since got similar equivalents. That's it. This has changed the landscape, and this medical devices thing. We talked about medical devices previously, where devices were allowed out without it being under any scrutiny and without any regulation. Of course, the regulations have come in, and it's cases like this that then require for those regulations to be upheld.
Because it's all fine to have your joint whipped out and another one put in, but then you've still got all those metal deposits and the damage caused by it and the pain.
And, some of it...
And going through 2 major surgeries.
Yeah, but those patients will have that in forever. They'll have those problems. They'll have those health issues forever. So it is a scandal. There's no doubt about it. It's a terrible scandal. When tens of thousands of people have been fitted with the devices,
that wasn't tested.
A very large number of those people have actually succumbed and have had to have ongoing surgical procedures.
And it's a lot to go through that, to have yourself cut open, even if it is just your hip.
So there's you think about corporate denial, but you also think about corporate regret as well, who ultimately takes responsibility for that. And actually, just proving there's a case is one thing, but actually the conscience there must be. You're
implying a business entity, which is a collective, has a conscience.
Yeah.
I don't doubt some of the individuals involved had a conscience, maybe not all of them. But the business can't have a conscience. No, that's not physically possible.
It's not amongst that huge group of people. But at the time as well, there were people. Pinnacle and ASR, both hip systems that both had problems. There were at the time encouragements by the sales teams of the company to have their sales conferences and push their salespeople to acquire more and more business. And when they hit $1 billion...
But that's not really a surprise, is it?
Yeah, I know. When they hit $1 billion in sales, they were encouraged, let's see if we can hit the next billion.
And that's ultimately what they're there for, to sell the units.
But of course, they won't have known they were selling something that was ultimately found to be defective. Yeah.
At the beginning, they wouldn't have done. They've got, look, we've got the certificates.
Yeah, but I'd say kudos to the medical community, who once they started seeing,
they voted with their feet, didn't they?
Yeah, they did, and they went for the alternative, ceramics,
which makes it or plastics,
mix of ceramic and metal, or plastics, and metal.
However much my hip hurts, I'm now not having a replacement. I'm just going to put
it may happen. I've got things happening in mine, but
you've got things happening with your hips.
Yeah, but
you got fluidy pockets.
The thought of it.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah. It's tragic. I don't think anyone died from it though, which is a good thing.
I will say though, medical invention, medical movement is a process. Like when they didn't used to have anaesthetic, you did just buy a spoon, but then they had chloroform, which is a little bit hit and miss. I'll agree. And obviously everything moves forward. I'm not saying they had to make this metal joint in order to push forward the development of a more suitable joint.
But everything comes from trial and error, doesn't it? Iteration.
There is an iteration of everything.
Yeah.
I'm not, the ivory one. Don't do that. Don't put organic matter into your body. That's not sensible. That doesn't belong there.
Yeah, actually, there's no. I didn't actually dig deeper on that. How long the patient lasted for?
I can't imagine the sanitary practices were that great either. But everything is processed. I'm not saying they had to put this hip into people, and I would have tested it with 2 or 3 rather than tens of thousands. But everything is a process of iteration. We now know. Do not use metal and metal.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So they shouldn't have tested it on quite so many people. I get that, but I do think they shouldn't.
Well, no, testing it by putting it into the market.
Yes.
No, testing it by a small sample, definitely. Yeah.
Who knew what was going on and that they were, in fact, a test subject. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's gross.
It's a cheerful little tale there.
That was lovely, thanks. Yeah. I'll sort of hobble off now and do something else.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks so much for listening and being a part of today's episode.
If you like what you've heard, or if you feel there's something missing, or you want to ask any questions, please get in contact.
And if you love listening to us as much as we love talking to you, subscribe, download, leave us a review. All the love helps.
Thank you.